What you're doing is you're trying to gouge the consumer for as much money as you can possibly get from them. So you're not creating a win-win scenario. You're trying to create profit at the exchange of value. You're not providing value. You're taking value from the consumer. What you're doing is you're trying to gouge the consumer for as much money as you can possibly get from them. So you're not creating a win-win scenario. You're trying to create profit at the exchange of value. You're not providing value. You're taking value from the consumer. All right, so this is a video I've been wanting to make for a very long time, and I'm not too sure how to sort of start this video off or to kind of lead into my opinions on this. So I'm just gonna jump into it. I believe that we are entering into an era of what I would call hyper-capitalism. And I think hyper-capitalism is ultimately going to destroy most people. Now, first of all, I want to start with this. What exactly is capitalism? I know there's a lot of different types of capitalism. I know there's a lot of different ways to describe capitalism. And I know that if you were to ask about 100 people, you'd probably get about 50 different answers. So this is what I mean when I say capitalism. This is my definition of capitalism based on the way I understand it. And I'm going to try to express this in the simplest way possible. You're welcome to give your own definitions in the comments below, but this is the way that I am choosing to describe it for the sake of this video. To me, capitalism is the ideal of an individual or a business creating a product or service to sell for profit. Now, embedded in that definition is the idea that the product or service is innovative enough or is beneficial enough that it helps the people around them. And when I say beneficial or helps the people around them, basically what I mean by this is there's a certain degree of supply and demand that exists with that service or with that product. So again, I'm trying to put this as simply as possible. If you are a company and you have a very shit product or a very shit service, people will not buy that shit product or that shit service, so you will no longer be in business for very long. That is the ideal. If you create a good product or a good service, you will be in business for maybe a brief period of time or a very long time. It depends. How does this benefit people? Well, another company, company B, might say, company A is creating a very good product or service, but I think I can do that a little bit better. So I think it's good because business B can sort of say, business A is making this product or the service, it's doing pretty well, the market seems to want it, and the market is buying it. I, however, can create the same product or the service in a much better way, or even a slightly better way, and I'll sell it and I'll compete. And this consistent competition forces everyone to be better, forces both companies to continuously get better, or forces other companies to try to compete, but do something better. Maybe they'll compete on price, maybe they'll compete on service or quality, whatever. But I think in an ideal capitalistic society, everyone's sort of competing to create the best product or the best service for the consumer. So the consumer wins because the consumer gets more of what they want, hopefully at a better cost, or the quality is better. And the company sort of wins too because the company is creating something that is profitable. So the company makes money, the employees make money, you create more jobs, the owner of the company gets money. I'm trying to simplify this as best as possible and not make this too complicated. But I think in an ideal capitalistic society, everyone sort of wins. Now, I don't think we're in that society anymore, for the most part. I do think nowadays we are entering into a hyper-capitalistic society. And I've expressed this before to people, the idea of hyper-capitalism, and some people look at me like I'm crazy, like, oh, this doesn't make any sense. What is hyper-capitalism? It's exactly what it sounds like. It's when you take some of the core components of capitalism and you push them to their absolute extremes. So pretty much instead of creating a company that works to serve the consumer in exchange for profit, what you're doing is you're trying to gouge the consumer for as much money as you can possibly get from them. So you're not creating a win-win scenario. You're trying to create profit at the exchange of value. You're not providing value. You're taking value from the consumer in order to line your own pockets. And I'm going to give a few examples throughout this video just to kind of illustrate this point. The problem with this hyper-capitalistic society that I feel like we're entering into is that it incentivizes everyone to fuck everyone else over, if I'm going to be blunt about it. Too many companies I see nowadays don't seem to care about the product or the service. They care so much more about just making a profit. And I think that's fine in general for a company to want to profit. That's great for everybody. The problem is when a company tries to profit so much without giving anything in exchange to the point where it hurts its consumers and it profits excessively more than it should. And I think that creates a negative feedback loop, because if one company's doing it and it works, other companies will say, well, company A is able to charge these crazy high prices without giving anything of value, and their profit margin's so big because they're not giving anything in exchange. I'm going to do that too. And it just incentivizes more companies to try to do the exact same thing and to keep pushing that boundary as far as possible. Again, without offering any incentive or any value to you as the consumer. So the consumer gets screwed over. And I think in the downside, I think ultimately the downside is that if there are no consumers to consume, there's no company to profit in the grand scheme of things. So it's almost like you're shooting yourself in the foot. You're trading short-term gains for a long-term disaster. At least this is the way I see it. So let me give you a few examples to maybe to help illustrate that point, because I know that might have sounded confusing. And I made a quick list of just a few things that kind of popped into my head when I was thinking about this video. First thing, companies like dropshipping. I hate the idea of modern dropshipping in general. I've seen it practiced in some ways that I'll say are relatively healthy or make sense. But I think in the grand scheme of things, when I see people trying to dropship, basically what I see is, how do I make money and how do I profit without offering anything to the consumer? So I'll give you a hypothetical. Let's say you're a 16-year-old child and you're in high school and you want to make money. You go on YouTube and you find some YouTuber that says, hey, if you go on this website like Alibaba or some kind of wholesaling website, some kind of Chinese manufacturer, you can buy a product and you can sell it on your TikTok. Now, you might buy the product for $1, but you'll sell it on your TikTok for $20, so you get a $19 profit. That's fine in theory. The issue is that so many people, what they're trying to do is they're just trying to price gouge. And when they find this $1 product, the product is shit. It's not a good product. And they try to sell it to other people for an exponentially higher amount than they bought it. Again, I'm totally okay with people trying to profit. That's not the issue here. The issue is that the quality of the product itself is worth $1 and you're trying to sell it for $20. And if that sounds like an exaggeration, it's not. A lot of dropshippers do that nowadays. And this is just one example. But it sort of feeds into that mindset of, how do I get as much from the consumer as possible without offering anything in exchange? Now, I'll share a quick story about dropshipping. When I think this is about 2016, 2017, I used to do dropshipping. And I used to have a company called the Gym Stop. And the Gym Stop essentially was it was a dropshipping company where we sold merchandise and products that were related to fitness and health and wellness. Initially, I did products like those blender cups and fitness bands, but I stopped doing those. I kind of just ended up focusing on clothing, really because I liked clothing. I like fitness clothing. I go to the gym consistently. I still go to the gym very consistently. I just like fitness clothing. So my thought process was, I'll sell fitness clothing. And I think at the time, I didn't see much issue with dropshipping. And the model of dropshipping in itself isn't that bad. I think most stores and most companies kind of do it when they sell merchandise. It's not the model that's the issue. The problem was, when I started doing dropshipping and I started selling stuff, eventually I started trying to test the things that I was shipping out to people. So I was selling stuff before I ever tested it myself. I had no idea the quality of the product. I just saw a picture. The picture looked cool. I put it on a website. I was able to make websites, and that was it. I sold through the website, and I ran ads and stuff too. But that was the core of the business model. I didn't care about profit margin per se. I didn't have a specific profit margin in mind. I just wanted to profit something. So every product was marked up based on what I thought it was worth or what I thought it could sell relative to what I could pay for it. So if a pair of joggers, for example, cost me $10 to get from AliExpress, which was the website I used. It was some manufacturer on AliExpress. If it cost me $10 for a pair of joggers, I would try to sell them for $20 and get the $10 profit. It would depend on the product, and it would depend on shipping costs, things like that. But that was the core of the business. And eventually one day I tried to test it, and I got some of the clothing, and it was horrible quality, terrible quality. Somewhere it was actually pretty good, and that stuff I kept selling. But some of it was just really poor quality, just pure like plasticky polyester garbage. And I thought to myself, I can't sell this because I wouldn't wear this myself. It just doesn't feel like a good product to sell. So I stopped, and that was one of the reasons why I shut down the Gym Stop. Now, I see people nowadays who will find a product that is just terrible quality, like doesn't even work. It's actually funny. There's a guy I've seen on Instagram, and his whole page is he'll see an ad and they market the product as this like really cool thing that you want, and he'll see an ad and the ad looks super cool. And he buys it and he tests it out to see if it actually does what it says it does based on the ad. 9 times out of 10, it's garbage. It doesn't do anything close to what the ad describes it's doing. So in my eyes, that's a scam. And I think that's the problem with dropshipping, is that people are more focused on just finding a cheap product and selling it rather than finding a quality product at an inexpensive cost to the business that they can sell for a decent profit margin, not for an extraordinarily high profit margin, a decent profit margin. So that's one example. That's dropshipping. Another example I thought of before I made this video, YouTubers. And as someone who's posting on YouTube, this might sound a little bit hypocritical. I don't think it is once you hear me out. I find a lot of people on YouTube who make content teaching people things about things that they have no real experience teaching. Things they have no business teaching at all. And they create courses that are way too expensive, that do not aim to offer any significant value. I'm totally fine with expensive courses, by the way. I'm fine with a YouTuber creating a business from YouTube. I'm fine with people selling stuff. These things are not the issue. The issue is when you are someone who creates a course on dropshipping, or a course on dating, or a course on real estate sales, and you've never done it yourself, and you also sell it for a very high price. That's my issue. And the problem is that sometimes people will buy these courses, and I've tested some of these out myself, and the course itself doesn't even have any quality information. I would say it's one thing if you didn't do the thing yourself, but you somehow created a course, maybe you consulted other people that did that thing, and you put together the course, and the course actually had really good insights. If that was the case, I think that's perfectly fine. The issue is you're selling a course about, say, dating, and you've never had a girlfriend, or you've never even gone on dates, or you're creating a course about how to get in shape, and yet you don't exercise. You've never exercised. You don't know anything about exercise. And the quality of the content within the course is garbage. It will not help anyone achieve any of their fitness goals. That's my issue. And I tend to find that is the case a lot more than not. Again, the problem with that is, in an ideal society, these course sales are legitimate, and it's pushing people to create much better courses. So the consumer wins because the consumer is getting much higher quality information. They know that person A or person B, they might have to choose between the two based on which personality or which individual they like best. But the guarantee in an ideal society is that they're getting a good product regardless. What people are doing now is they're just using like AI and ChatGPT and just bullshit to come up with these courses or come up with products that really aren't useful, and they couldn't give any nuance if they tried personally. So they push it out, they charge a really high amount for it, and there's nothing to gain from it. And if they profit, the next person thinks to themselves, oh, if person A did that and it worked so well, then let me try to do it too. And they tried it, and it creates this long cycle of everyone just pushing out garbage, and everyone thinks that that's the thing to do. So I don't know. That's the second thing that I see a lot. Now I'm going to start getting into more bigger businesses, because it's not just people on a small level. It's not just influencers I see that are pushing this garbage or kind of creating this hyper-capitalistic society. I see it the most from big businesses. So the next one I want to talk about is a big business that I loathe with a passion. And I've been talking about this for years. And nothing's changed from the time that I first started talking about this in 2010 or 2017 up until now. That is the education system. To me, the education system is extremely guilty of sort of participating in this hyper-capitalistic society. Why do I say this? I won't go super deep into every single thing that the education system does to kind of price gouge and to kind of essentially scam students. But one of the main things that they do is what I call double inflation. Now, what is double inflation? All right, so let me explain what I mean by double inflation. Essentially, double inflation when it comes to the education system, and in this case, I'm talking specifically about colleges, is the tuition of college has increased significantly. But the amount of majors and the amount of students that go to college has also increased significantly. And the problem is that it decreases the value of the degree. If a few people could go to college, then a college degree is worth a lot because it's supply and demand. There's a limited amount of supply for a high demand. However, if anyone can get into college for the most part, or if too many people get into college, the demand is decreased because the supply is so high. Hopefully that makes sense. But on top of that, the price hasn't decreased to reflect the lower demand for college. The opposites happen. It's increased, so it's double inflated. It's inflated on both ends, which makes it almost pointless to join. And again, I don't want to get super deep into college as like a specific topic because I could probably make a whole video, a whole hour-long, 2-hour-long video on that alone. But to me, it's just another example of hyper-capitalism. Colleges aren't focused these days, in my personal opinion, on creating a curriculum that'll help their students succeed in the modern era. It's too slow-paced, and I think too much of the money gets funneled into athletics and to, if I'm going to be blunt about it, the administrators' pockets. Instead, what they try to do is they try to make the campus look as beautiful as possible by making all these new buildings that don't offer any genuine objective benefit to the students when it comes to actually learning things they need to learn. They create more majors that are insignificant. They do not matter. We don't need a underwater basket weaving major. We don't need a major on poetry in the 1900s. We don't need these majors. These things do not benefit us as a society. They're good to study in your own free time. Sure, it could be perfectly fine as like a club or an organization or an extracurricular. It does not need to be a major. And they're trying to, essentially what these colleges do is they use these fancy buildings, they use their athletics, they use the big campus to market to their students that this will give them the highest quality of life possible. And it doesn't. It's hyperinflated. It's overly capitalistic because you're just trying to profit off of the students by offering very little value in exchange for a high cost. So that's another example. The fourth example that I have in mind, the fourth example that I wanted to share that kind of came to mind when I was sort of writing the bullet points for this video, insurance. Now, aside from owning Productivity Accelerator, I also work as the head of business development for a franchise of medical laboratories. And I will say this from firsthand experience. Insurance is downright a scam in 2025. I do not understand it. I do not understand why people participate in insurance. I personally believe that most people should just collectively not have insurance and let them adjust their business model to actually be capitalistic and not hyper-capitalistic. But I've seen so many insurance companies just price gouge people. They charge extremely high rates for their deductibles, for their copays, but they offer very little value in terms of what they are actually willing to pay for, even for medically necessary surgeries or laboratory tests or doctor's visits. You name it, it gets denied or rejected. Now, I won't get super deep into this because, as you may be aware of, a certain incident has happened in, I believe, a few months ago, regarding the unaliving of a certain CEO for a certain insurance company. I won't say my thoughts on it in this video. If you're interested, I might make a video and leave my thoughts on it, on that situation and the medical industry as a whole. Let me know in the comments if you want a video on that and I'll make that. But I personally consider insurance in the modern era to be a scam. I do understand why people buy it. I've seen more benefit in not having insurance than having insurance, which to me is insane. And I think if nothing else, that is a pure example of hyper-capitalism. You know you're in a hyper-capitalistic society when not purchasing something is much better for you than purchasing the thing. Again, think about the original definition that I shared with you. In a hyper-capitalistic society, you're extracting value from the consumer without delivering anything in exchange. You're just taking money without offering value. That's the opposite of what things should be. Insurance is super guilty of this. They take your money without offering any benefit to you as the consumer of that insurance policy. That's the fourth one that I want to talk about. The last one that I want to talk about is housing. Now, I used to be a full-time real estate agent. I still do real estate consulting on the side, but it's not my primary business. So I do have some experience when it comes to the real estate industry. And I will say this. Housing prices make no sense in 2025. They are absurd to me. I think the way that houses are priced even when I was in real estate as an agent, the way houses are priced to me is nonsensical. I don't understand it. I couldn't tell you where it came from. I have my thoughts on it. I'm not going to share them in this video, but I do think that modern housing prices are just absurd, and I think it's the result of a hyper-capitalistic society. I think the idea that you can live in a house on a block, the house might be $200,000, some company can come in down the street and maybe pay $300,000, hypothetically speaking, of course, above asking price in order to inflate the price. In order to inflate the price of every other house on the block is absurd to me. It makes no sense. It's nonsensical. And it hurts everyone else. It makes it so that way no one can purchase houses in the grand scheme of things. And it makes it that way corporations simply just own every single house on the block, which means they can charge exorbitant amounts for just standard living. And I'm oversimplifying things, of course, because I don't want this video to be too much longer than it already is. But the point that I'm making is that this is just another example of hyper-capitalism. It's when we're pushing the boundaries of what is beneficial to the consumer versus what is beneficial to the company solely. There's no win-win, it's just win-lose, and the winning's only done on the company's part. Even the quality of homes being built, the quality of apartments being built is significantly less than I feel like it's ever been. Or at least I feel like it's worse than it should be. So that's kind of just my takeaway. I'm curious to know what you think about this. Do you think we're living in a hyper-capitalistic society? Do you agree with my definition? Do you agree with the examples I shared in this video? If not, let me know in the comments. If you do, let me know in the comments as well. And if you thought this video was interesting or if someone could benefit from this, please do me a favor and like and share the video. It means a lot to me. It helps me a lot with the algorithm. And I'm really trying to fight YouTube to help push out more of my content to more people that might enjoy it. So please like, please comment, and please subscribe and share if you enjoyed the video. But otherwise, I hope to see you in the next video. Take care. Bye.